Okay. It's Sunday, February 18th. In Portugal, they are doing the Spectrum Game of the Year. I think that was yesterday on Saturday. It might be all weekend. And maybe somebody from Portugal will drop in and tell us about that. If not this Sunday, this today rather, maybe the next Sunday meeting. We don't really have an agenda except that the Albuquerque user group has been working overtime on their K-Pro on the 1510 cartridges for the 1500 and also for the 1000. Joe sent me some tapes that he had recovered that apparently he bought new 40 years ago. One of which I'm trying to run on ZSorx right now, but it just crashed with a B/30 error. So I'll rerun it and show you for however long it takes to crash again. So with that, Joe, let's start with you. Let's talk about Craig Bird and his crazy software.
Yeah, so long time ago, I was looking for a word processor for doing schoolwork, and saw an ad for the Bird processor, and it was Canadian, and I'm from Michigan, so it wasn't very far away. So I went ahead and mail ordered it, and I used that word processor and the byte back parallel printer interface to a little Epson FX80 dot matrix printer, and I would use that to write papers.
Wow.
For high school and first couple years of college.
I'm gonna put this up on the screen. Did that work for y'all?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was running it under 81 just to bring back memory, but
okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it runs better underneath there.
Well, no, actually, this is a Mac, and so 81 doesn't work on the newest, the M1 Max.
Right. Okay. But yeah, that was my word processor for
wow,
a good 3-4 years.
Oh.
Yeah.
Man, I'm making the typos all over the place. So those reverse.
And you're typing on a regular keyboard, right? So that's a horrible excuse. I could say if you were typing on the 1000 keyboard, but
you're absolutely correct, Carl.
Man, tough room today.
Well, it's my birthday, so I'm entitled. No,
well, let's talk about
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
So, Adam, you have a question.
I do. So we're just talking about keyboards, so that goes right in with what I was thinking. Were you typing everything on your 1000 regular keyboard?
Joe, I think that's to you.
No, I actually built a like a mechanical keyboard from something I bought salvage. So I grew up near Heathkit.
Oh,
right, Heath Corporation, and there was a salvage company that sold bits and pieces, broken stuff. So I had a keyboard that was had some broken keys on it. It was all one molded piece of plastic with a bunch of key switches in it, like the old Texas Instrument ones, mechanical key switches, little leaves that come together, right? And some of the keys didn't work, but I had more than enough keys to do a nice full-size keyboard for the ZX81. So yeah, that's what I typed on.
Was the set of working keys within the sort of usual?
Yes. It was it was the stuff around the outside that got messed up. Apparently it took some damage from one side and smashed it into the other side. So the outer keys were bad, but the central part of the keyboard was great. All the normal alphanumeric keys. So yeah.
And you're bringing back a memory for me. I remember I don't know where I saw it, but I remember back in the 80s seeing keyboards like what you're talking about, where there were individual keys and it was clear that they were sort of all molded together, somehow fused. And But was that the first TI keyboard, or was it something else?
It was similar to the first TI keyboards.
Okay.
The first TI keyboards had a circuit board that all the keys were soldered onto.
Yeah.
This was a molded block of plastic and had the individual key switches, but it was the same sort of, I think it was keytronic mechanism.
Okay.
With the two leaves. One was a solid and one was fingers, and they would come together when you press the key down.
I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I typed on. Yeah.
So you also sent me ZCOM, which is a terminal program for the 1000.
Right. I did not see that. I saw the manual for byteback ZCOM out there for the byteback 2 modem, but I couldn't find the software anywhere.
Yeah.
So there's the software.
Cool.
The tapes that I recovered, they were part of a flood damage from in the 90s, right? And I had literally taken the stuff and unspooled the cassette tape and hung them up, and the manuals, you'll notice that the manual scans, the paper is pretty degraded. That's because of the water damage.
Yeah.
But I was able to read those in there with that goofy little USB tape thing, and then use Audacity to go in and eliminate all the noise, because there were noise spikes in the data as big as the data. Whoa. So it would never read. But you can easily tell which is a 0 and which is a 1.
Cool.
So I know this has been going on for months. Every time I had a little bit of spare time or needed a break from reality, I would open up Audacity and I would edit a few seconds of tape. It's very cathartic, to just go in there and say, oh, well, that looks like a 0 to me and that looks like a 1 to me. It was pretty obvious what they were. So yeah, you just walk down the line.
Me, Joe, I used there's a guy who's got all this archived CX81 software out there. And he also has written this Java program for cleaning up recordings.
Tape Doctor's one, and I had another one, and both of them took that original tape and just vomited it, because it was just endless errors. I mean, every single bit pattern was a red mark.
Okay.
I'm talking 300,000 errors in a
oh dear God
2K program, right?
Oh dear God.
Yeah, I said, okay, this isn't going to work. So what I did was I edited it down and cleaned up all those spikes and got rid of them all. And I actually had 2 copies of the tape, of the program on the tape, so I could take one copy and lay it on the other copy side by side as 2 tracks in Audacity to compare them. So if there was one spot where there was just nothing or nothing that I could definitely discern, I could pick it up from the other side and kind of paste it in. So yeah, it was, like I said, it was tedious and long, but also it was relaxing because it was just mindless editing.
Well, that might be good for Adam, because I'm looking forward to him getting onto these BBSs with the 1000.
Oh goodness gracious, yeah. We did use the modem yesterday. But I'll talk about that more later. We got to use Z-Term with 64 columns.
Oh, so okay. Joe, how old were you when you were using this word processor?
16, 17, 18, that time frame, yeah.
Wow. So high school, right? And early college?
Yeah, late high school, early college, yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
More power to you, man.
Yeah. Well, my college had 1500s that you go to the library and check out a 1500, and I could load that up with my word processor, and that was fun too. So.
Would it be rude to ask what college you went to? Because that's
Southwestern Michigan College. It's a little community college that I went to for a couple of years.
Okay. And they have 1500s, huh?
Yeah.
Has that ever come up before? Maybe we can talk about that. If not now, then some other time. I don't remember ever hearing from you, Joe, saying that you brought up and could check out Timex computers from school.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was you could check out Timex Sinclair 1000s and some 1500s, and in fact, I did a lab where I set them all up as a little training program for folks where they could go in and learn things. You know, it was a psychology project, you know. And as I remember, I think I got a pretty good grade on that too, because nobody else was using computer learning. That was something, you know. Yeah, computer learning. Buzzword.
So, you know, actually, Joe, that's the second college I have heard about that had Timex Sinclairs. And when I worked at Plattsburgh State, which is up in the sort of northernmost region of New York State, one of my friends who worked there for a really long time told me about how in the early 80s the Plattsburgh State had set up computer labs with like 1000s, and he was an electronic technician, and you know, they'd come in on a Monday, and for some reason, you know, several of the 1000s were no longer working, and they'd bring him into the lab, and he'd, you know, do his thing and, you know, repair them and send him back out to the computer lab. Finally, they figured out that the cleaning crew was going through and vacuuming the computers, and that the static electricity generated by the vacuum was zapping them. those times
and he really had to clean up their mess.
Right. Well, vacuuming, it's a membrane keyboard. What are you going to vacuum? So yeah, that was craziness. Carl,
is that everything that was archived?
oh, oh, that's right, thank you. There was the Zcon, there was this something called Byte Back Parallel. Let's see what this
There
is.
was the parallel port
okay
interface.
Okay.
There's software for that, so you
okay, and the manual.
could actually use that, and the manual, and
Okay.
the byteback ZCOM software.
Yep.
And the manual for that
and
is
what
already
about,
online. That was already online. The manual.
what about this high res thing?
Oh, and that's another Bird.
Yep.
Craig Bird program. It basically allowed you to do high res graphics, and it came with a little. He called it Bust Out. It's a breakout clone.
Okay.
But in high res.
Now, did you use it to do anything?
Basically just draw pictures.
Okay.
You know, back before there was paint.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I could create a picture and then dump it out to my printer, so I could add that to a document if I wanted to.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Before we move on, I see at least one new person, Jeremiah Stoddard. And Z, have you joined us before? I think you have, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been floating in and out over time for the last couple of months.
That's a very nice setup you have there. Video game systems. What's that, Miss Pac-Man?
Yeah, it's a Miss Pac-Man.
Nice.
And, yeah, you guys got me back on my 2068, which is the first computer that I ever had. So
awesome.
I collect them as a hobby. I got Amigas over here, I got Ataris over here. So yeah, got stuff everywhere.
We won't shame you for that stuff. And hey, Jeremiah, do you want to say hi, or
Sure. I've got my camera off mostly because I'm eating a late breakfast here and don't need to be doing that on screen, but glad to
I understand completely. So welcome. Jeremiah, are you a new or old Timex user?
I'm a new Timex Sinclair user. I just got one while waiting for the Spectrum Next Kickstarter 2 to ship out.
Mm-hmm.
So to familiarize myself with the Sinclair stuff, I picked up a 2068 and have been having fun with it since.
Cool. Yeah, so that was a long wait.
Yeah.
I was part of the first Kickstarter, and that was a long wait. And you guys had even longer wait for the 2. Oh my God.
Where are you located?
San Diego.
Okay.
Okay. And so since this is your first meeting, Jeremiah, we usually meet, we start out meeting on just Monday evening, first Monday of the month, and that is later in the evening. It works out for all sorts of folks in North America. And we had some European folks join us for the first couple of meetings, and I think after a meeting or two they were like, hey, could you have a meeting at a more reasonable hour? And so we started meeting on Sunday, the third Sunday of the month, at this time at 2:00 Eastern. So it's more reasonable for us. And Johnny Red, who has just joined us, is one of those folks. He's in Portugal, and I don't know if you're familiar with what we would call well, I loosely call the Portugal connection, but there was Timex in Middlebury, Connecticut, and that's where for the vast majority of Americans, that's where all the action was, right? That's where our computers came from. That's where the programmers were and the hardware folks, etc. And there was a factory in Portugal, which was, they call Timex Portugal mostly. And after, well, actually not after, but towards the end of when Timex Middlebury was getting close to deciding to get out of the business, Timex Portugal, the folks in Portugal were becoming really involved in all sorts of things. So, for instance, the 1500, when Timex Middlebury initially came up with the idea, it was going to be in the 1000 case, but it was going to have 16K of RAM internal, which was supposed to take care of one of the worst things about the 1000, which was this, what they called RAM pack wobble, where you'd type on it, the RAM pack would wobble, and you'd lose all your work, right? So they thought, well, we'll just build this 1500, but this new computer, and it will have the 16K of RAM inside, and literally it was going to be a row of chips underneath the keyboard on the sort of front end of the circuit board, and it was going to be silver, and that was all that they really planned on doing. And somehow the folks in Portugal got involved and said, well, we have ideas. And one of the ideas that they had was put it in a Spectrum style case with rubber keys, and they sent over a prototype, and the folks in Middlebury were like, oh, this is a good idea, let's go this way. There's a lot of documentation about this that made it back to Portugal. It's really cool. So anyway, Johnny is in Portugal. He's a huge fan. So, and then after Timex Middlebury got out of the business, Timex Portugal started producing all sorts of stuff. Like there's a version of the 2068 called the Timex Computer 2068. Very similar. It has a different expansion bus, but it has the bank switching and the other features. And then they kept developing stuff like a disk drive system for it and all sorts of other fun devices. And Johnny put up this website a gazillion years ago, maybe 20, maybe longer, about all of this stuff. And for the longest time, his website was the sole source of that information. And then another person, Joao Diogo Ramos, started a physical museum called Load ZX Spectrum, and Joao joins us every once in a while as well. And they have been really successful in to developing the museum and the events and activities around it. And they are hosting this weekend a thing called the Game of the Year, competition exposition for the ZX Spectrum folks. ZX Spectrum people are still super interactive. I mean, as as a Kickstarter owner, as a Next owner. So that's why we're here today at 2 versus, at a more normal hour, and why some folks, game of the year was yesterday, he says. Okay. That's why we're here at, middle of the afternoon on Sunday versus a more usual hour of the evening. But thank you, Jeremiah, for joining us, and please always come back. The more the merrier. We thrive on chaos.
Well, hopefully you're on the group's IO, I would hope, by now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't think I think everybody else in. I'm trying to get the turn off the chat. There we go. Everybody else looks like regular folks. Hey, Johnny, do you want to talk about regulars? Johnny, do you want to talk about the game of the year thing for a sec?
Not sure what you want to know about it.
Well,
what one?
What do you...
right. So
one, it was a game named Serafima. I think it was a Russian game.
So, there's a lot of folks who are going to watch this who are not familiar with the the concept at all, right? They've never heard of it. So how long has this been going on, do you think? Do you know?
What event?
The game of the year thing.
Game of the year is about the game's launched last year, 2023.
But I mean, the event, it's the recognition. How long has that been going on? Do you?
I think it's the fourth time it is done. The second time done in the museum.
Okay.
First and second, I think it was only online.
And you guys do a real, in-person physical activity, right?
Yes.
The whole stage and everything.
Yes, everything with confetti also.
I guess that was in because I saw something about that. It's in Portugal, right? Or it's Portuguese, or it's not in English.
This year it was the first time we transmitted it in English, also with English, a person writing comments in English.
Okay.
On the streams. We had a stream in YouTube and Twitch, and the person was helping with people who don't understand Portuguese.
So that would be the vast majority of us. How many people attended the in-person event? Do you know?
The in-person, 50, 60 people.
Okay.
The room was almost full.
Wow.
And it is a small room.
Do you have a sense for how many people, watched it live?
No, I was not controlling the streams.
Okay. Cool. And if we go to the Load ZX Spectrum site, would we find this, or the Load ZX Spectrum's YouTube channel?
YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yes, I think it's there.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
I saw the stream because I was around checking things, and I saw sometimes, but I was not keeping it on watch. So I believe it's there.
Cool. Okay.
Almost 3 hours of live.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
It's almost like the Oscars with various categories, like platform games, puzzle games, games made in BASIC, adventure games, text games.
Now, are the games are they all games developed by folks in Portugal, or are they?
No. Around the world.
Around the world. Okay.
All games that we can see that people launch. All games are played by a jury.
Oh.
And they give a punctuation about every aspect of the game, and by the end, all the all the punctuation given by each jury is summed up, and the winner is determined.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of game playing, because I mean I've seen the list from prior years, and it's it's a substantial list of games that folks have developed. Like I
It's
said,
about
the Spectrum community is
200,
very active.
200, 300 games in a year
Oh my God, that's a lot of games to play. You have to
for the
start like
Spectrum.
you have to start today playing the games for next year.
Uh, it's already being counted all games that are already launched, that have been released
Wow.
this year.
Are there prizes that folks win, or is it just the glory?
I know there is a trophy for the winner of the game of the year. Not sure if is there any monetary,
Mhm.
because I have not seen the details of it.
Well, they probably get a new like a rubber keypad so they can replace the keypad on there.
I don't
It
believe
gets-
people. I don't believe they programmed the game in the real machine.
How do they play them then? Are they
lengthy.
played in emulator or
I
they're
think
not?
the emulator. I think the jury plays it on the emulator. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not in the jury.
Okay. I mean, I was just kind of curious because do they play it on real hardware or do they play it emulated?
I'm not sure. Probably some emulated, some in the physical machine. But still, loading 200 games on tape, it's a bit lengthy.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Adam asked if there were any physical releases. I know that
In tape, on tape.
yeah.
I know at least that Technamic and Bitnamic publishes some physical games.
That's exactly what I was thinking of, because I follow him on Facebook, and every once in a while he posts this picture of just piles of boxes.
Yeah. And the
He's-
tapes are very nice. The cases of the tape to me are all very nice.
Well, that's pretty amazing,
It's
actually.
it's a beautiful packaging.
Yeah, his packages are really, really nice.
Really nice.
Well,
Yeah.
that gives Ryan something to do because he just got his ZX Spectrum back.
I'm trying to remember how to spell that.
What, Technamic?
Yeah. Oh, I got it right here. TEK. I'm just gonna put the
TEK.
link to the guy's shop in the chat. But yeah,
Where's his shop at? In Portugal or somewhere else?
I think is he English?
No, Felipe is Portuguese.
Is he? Okay.
And he has a friend named Marcos Garrett. He's Brazilian. He's in Brazil.
Wow.
And they talk to each other, and it's like Technamic is the company from Brazil and Bitnamic from Portugal, but are the same two people.
That's crazy. That's an amazing international collaboration.
Yeah, yes, it is.
Wow.
Marcus was on the 40 years of the Spectrum.
Okay.
In Cantanhede.
Yeah, these prices are in euros, so somewhere. Yeah, housed in Portugal.
Yeah, also Spectrum Next games. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a couple games for the next. Yeah. So all you Next owners. I think we have at least 2 Next owners on today. Can go get some games. Cool. Thank you, Johnny.
Actually, Carl, we should actually try that at the next meeting. We should bring her next over here and try some of these games if they're freely available. I don't even know if that's the case.
No. They are sold by the Technamic and Bitnamic.
Yeah,
I would have no trouble buying 1 or 2 of them. That'd be cool.
Well, get us some bootlegs, Red. No, just kidding.
I don't have an X to play them.
Well, I mean, in this case, so there's a game called Saboteur for the Next, written by some guy named Clive Townsend. I'm sure that this is, if you're English and into the ZX Spectrum community, this person's name means something to you.
Yes, it does mean it. It's the creator of the Saboteur series.
Okay, and I kind of gathered a little bit, about that just by reading the posts on Facebook.
Flip also published a book about Clive Townsend.
Okay.
He worked on many systems beyond Spectrum.
Okay.
Beyond the Spectrum, and he agreed to make various versions of the Saboteur for different systems, like the Sega Genesis. He ported the Saboteur for Sega Genesis. It's really nice. I played it a bit on a street gaming event because Flip brought the file, the home file, and we put it on those cartridges that you put an SD card and have all games you want.
Right.
And run it directly on the Genesis console. Yep. And there are new versions of Saboteur. I know it's going to launch a new one. Not sure the name of it yet. But Clive Townsend is working with Technamic.
To be clear, I think. Go ahead, David.
Oh, so the reason I bring these up is because they come out on SD cards, which makes them easier to copy than cassette tapes.
Yeah, but you don't get the packaging. The packaging is really nice.
Right. No, I'm just making a joke about the piracy that we might have engaged in as younger people back in the 80s.
Well, we are not safe.
Go ahead, Adam.
It's like a AAA game. It's launched today, and tomorrow it's already cracked.
Yeah,
and on piracy with the big companies, and what a small person can do to avoid it. Nothing.
Yeah. I was going to ask, Saboteur, that was originally made for the BBC Micro. Is that the game we're talking about?
I don't know.
I'm not sure. I've read the book of Clive Townsend, but I don't recall if the first version was directly made for the
I'm just remembering. I mean, this is from what I read from
it was
the magazine.
Or if it was ported later.
It's not important. I was just wondering if you knew off the top of your head.
I don't know. That's a good question.
It probably isn't a good question.
Adam, there's a whole book, 368 pages about the Saboteur story.
Well, go ahead and read that in the next meeting. Tell us.
Oh, it's too much pages, much stuff.
I'm going to put it in chat here for you so you can get it, Adam.
Oh, I don't know. I've got plenty of books to read. Oh my gosh. Actually, I'm going to a Howard Days event in Texas in June, so I'm planning to read all the Conan stories again by June. So I've got a lot of reading ahead of me.
Oh, this book is fun to read.
Cool. All right. Carl, you have been working on so many things for and Adam commented on this in one of his emails. It's like you've been working overtime, between multiple projects.
Yeah, definitely keeping busy with this stuff.
And I see what time your emails come, and I'm like, when does Carl sleep?
Well, I'm a night guy, so I'm not a morning person. So yeah, staying up late at night is no big deal for me.
So I guess talk to us first about the 1510 saga.
Yeah, so I can't remember how this kind of started. Oh, it started with that eBay. You posted somebody was selling one on eBay, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess some people didn't even know, obviously, that even existed.
Well, before you say that, Carl, we haven't mentioned what was posted on eBay.
Oh, right. Okay. So for the benefit of folks who don't know what a 1510 is, because we, as Adam often reminds me, not everybody knows everything. When Timex brought out the 1500 computer, they also brought out a little cartridge port doodad that would plug into the back of it. and it solved the slow tape loading problem for 4 of their titles: Flight Simulator,
States and Capitals.
Super
thank
Mouse,
you,
Super
States and
Mouse,
Capitals, yes,
Chess.
the trenchant States and Capitals.
Yeah.
What were the other 2, Carl?
Super Mouse.
Chess and Supermath. Yeah.
Supermath, yeah, all things that, you know, as a, say, 14-year-old, you'd really want to be engaged with, right? But you know, this was one of the complaints in the media at the time about the 1000, is it took a long time to load programs, especially 16K programs. And so with this cartridge, it's such a bizarre thing, you know, because the 1500 was still a black and white computer. It's essentially a moderately upgraded 1000 in a different case. It's got 16K of RAM built in. You could plug in the original Timex 16K RAM pack, and you would get 32K of RAM. You'd have to do some poking to get it to work. And then you had this little cartridge device that would plug into the back and let you, you know, practice your super math, or your states and capitals. And ostensibly they were going to bring out more cartridges, right? And I kind of feel like this was sort of an idea backported from the 2068, which is descendant from the Spectrum, and that they made some upgrades to, including put a cartridge slot on it. And this is all happening in 1983, when video game systems are just exploding, right? For those of us who lived it, 1983 was kind of the peak of the video game industry in the US. And then
was the peak and the crash.
It was the peak and the crash, exactly right. There was a sort of saturation of video game systems, and a lot of folks were also switching to home computers, and there was a load of companies bringing out both video game systems and home computers all at the same time. And so there was this big crash that happened. It's really interesting to read about. Anyway, so
I mean, and David, you do bring up a good point, because I don't know, in Britain, cartridge didn't really seem to be as important, I guess, if you want to, for lack of a better word. Or here in America, because cartridges, you're going back to, I know when I was a kid, my dad got a Fairchild Channel S system, right? And and that had those big yellow, it looked like an 8-track tape kind of thing, but it was a cartridge, right? And they were cartridges. It used the Fairchild, their F8 processor. But cartridges go, and that thing I think came out in 76. And you had some earlier ones, I think Odyssey. I mean, they weren't really cartridges; they were kind of just telling the chip to do different things. It was just a circuit card, right? Exactly. So I mean, cartridges here in the U.S., I think, were much more accepted and popular, especially once the Atari 2600 came. The VCS came out.
Yes,
that was all cartridge based. And so I think Timex had that in their mind when, the Spectrum came out, no cartridge port, no solid state software loading, right? Everybody's stuck with tape. So I think Timex, and it was a good idea, is to put the cartridge, get cartridges into the Sinclair line, right? And obviously with the 2068 with the cartridge port built in. And you're right, I think they kind of wanted to backport that to the 1000 because there was a huge install base for that at that time. You're like, hey, and if you look at the ads for that, the 1510, it was $20, 1999 or 1995 or whatever. You mail ordered for it. I don't think maybe some stores had it. I don't know, but I just remember seeing the ad. It's in the it's in those Timex newsletters, or ramblings, right? That's where you'll see those ads. And anyway, I don't know if you wanted to wrap something up there, Dave.
But to your point, Carl, there was the 2600, was hugely popular, right? And the Intellivision, and some other systems, and they were cartridge based, right? And there was a point at which computer manufacturers realized we can, cannibalize some of that market by putting a cartridge port on our computer, the VIC-20, the TI, the Radio Shack color computer,
The Atari.
These are the ones just off the top, the Atari computers, of course. These are the ones just off the top of my head. It was a thing. It was a whole big thing,
Yeah.
right? And it was just not as big a thing as you said, in Britain. So anyway, this ridiculous cartridge was attached to a tiny black and white computer. It was a super throwback. It was in no way competitive with any of the video game systems because they were all color, well, except Pong, and certain really cheap General Instruments based video game systems. But it couldn't compete with the 2600. It couldn't compete
Although,
with anything.
I do kind of want to give a shout out to Paul Faro because I've been talking to him related to this cartridge thing. And Paul Faro, I guess he, developed the 81 emulator.
Yep.
And he also has the Chroma 80, the Chroma 81, and the Spectra. So the Chromas basically bring color and sound and RGB output to the ZX80 for the Chroma 80. They just tried to deliver mine yesterday, but I wasn't here. I was up at Adam's place. And he's got a Chroma 81, which is for the ZX81 and 1000. But it brings, like I said, color, and he actually has colorized games that he's gone back, or I don't know if he's done it, or maybe some people that he knows have helped him. But he has colorized some of the ZX81 games.
Yeah.
And added sound to them. And this Chroma thing has a cartridge port. It's basically the same cartridge port that's on the Spectrum, the ZX Interface 2. So it's that format. And so he builds these himself, I guess. So, that's why he doesn't have any of the 81s, because I would, like to get the 81. He knows that. Maybe some of you guys be interested in that, and kind of let him know, and maybe that'll light a little fire under him to, maybe get all those parts together and build some of those. But I guess he had a big thing going on with the 80, right? The ZX80. And so he made the Chroma 80. That's what he's been working on, I guess, for the last, I want to say at least a year and a half, because I know I've been on the waiting list for that for a while. And then finally, I think in maybe late November or early December, he finally got some made and sent out to people up in Britain, right? And then finally it came around to me, and it's like, hey man, yeah, you want one of these still? I got your name on the list. And so anyway, the Chroma 80 is here. I guess I got to go get it at the post office. And but the problem with that is I don't have a ZX80, so now I got to get a ZX80 board and build one up. And because he says they're not really compatible. I mean, they're basically the same machine, right? But
it's different. Yeah.
It is.
What about a minstrel, Carl? Would a minstrel work?
I'm not sure what that is. Minstrel?
Yeah, it's I forgot the guy's name, but it's Tynemouth Software.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know that company.
And he, sort of reverse engineered it and made a modern circuit board. I know for the 81, and I think he did one for the 80, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, there's boards out there for the 80, and then there's somebody that makes the case. The case for it, the white, ZX80 with the stickers and everything, so you can. Because getting a real one, obviously, those things are very rare to find these days, and you're going to pay probably $300-400 if you're going to get one. And I don't mind building one, so that I'll have to just end up, making one so I can use this Chroma 80.
All right, so let's get back. Now that we've done this really long intro to what the heck is the 1510. What?
So I guess I'll start with so obviously David posted on that somebody was selling one on eBay. I think it went for $152-ish. I know I get his name wrong. Andy, right.
Oh,
I think Andy had bid up to $150, but I think he got it got out from under him. So somebody outbid him and got it for $153 or whatever.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't in the best of shape, had like Sharpie writing on it and stuff like that. But hey, I mean, it's an original one, so whatever. You know, I know when I bought mine, it was in the box original. I don't think it had ever been used, and I paid $300 or more for it, maybe 350.
Actually, I know the story behind that particular one, but we'll get into it later.
Okay. And he actually had another one. You know, I bought that on eBay. He's like, hey, you know, I got another one. It's not in the box. You know, it's just another one if you wanted to buy it. And I think I paid 150 for that, or $100 or something like that. And you know, I never use those. You know, we had them. I brought them over to Adam's house like a year and a half ago, and I know Adam made a YouTube video and posted it up of the stuff that we brought over. But I had never used them. So I guess this is a nice catalyst to actually use them, because I was having problems, as we'll discuss, with Flight Simulator. And this is how Paul Faro comes into play, because apparently nobody had a dump, right? A ROM dump of Flight Simulator all these years until like April of last year.
Oh,
I guess somebody wanted Flight Simulator to work in the 81 emulator, and I guess it wasn't. And I guess this guy had the Flight Simulator cartridge. So Paul sent him a little program to dump it, and sent it back to Paul, you know, the dump back to Paul, and Paul started looking at it and figured out, you know, you know, how it worked. And it basically, Flight Simulator is a 16K cartridge, right? It has two 8K chips in it. I busted open my cartridges and took some pictures. I just posted that yesterday, you know, the guts of the 1500 cartridges.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see on the States and Capitals one, because I only have two. I have the States and Capitals and Flight Simulator. I don't have the other two. But you can see on States and Capitals that it's unpopulated on the PC board, right? Where the chip would go down.
Yep.
And they would you know, die bond it and put the little epoxy blob on top. So from that, I was tracing all the physical lines on the real cartridge, right? Because on the Superflow version, when he designed the clone, which we're kind of talking about here, that seems to work. Well, it does work fine for the 8K cartridges. I did a multi-cart, and you can use the little dip switches that Claudius, you know, Claudius made a kind of an updated version in 2020.
Yeah.
And I have the boards for that. You know, I had the boards made. I think maybe 25 of the boards. Because I was planning on kind of selling them at some point, but then, you know, it just seemed like nobody was going to be interested in it, so I kind of shelved it. Since I had the original ones anyway, I mean, it wasn't really doing me any good. I just was thinking, you know, it might be something nice for other folks to have. And then apparently it is, because, you know, once David posted that on there, people were like, hey, you know, I'd be interested in, you know, I think I have like 10 people that sent me, you know, or replied to that thread saying that, you know, they'd be interested in having at least one, if not, you know, 2 or 3 of them. And yeah, I don't know. That looks like, is that a 2068 one?
Right.
David?
I was just going to show this because it is similar in design to the 1500 one with the 2 spaces for the, you know, chip and the epoxy blob on top.
What's the hole in the? Oh, is that for the screw, the mounting screw that holds it together?
No, that's another. It's another chip right there.
That's another chip
under that epoxy blob. It's probably like a 138 or something.
Okay,
74
it's a decoder probably,
or 32 maybe 74 LS 32.
That'd be nice to take a close up of that and post it up there too.
I'll do that.
That'd be nice to. But anyway, yeah, I'm sure you know, when they made the 1500 or the 2068 cartridges, they shared the same basic design, right? The casing, physical casing of the cartridges are the same. The colors are different, right? The 1000 cartridges are kind of a brownish color, and I think the 2068 cartridges are grayish, right? They are also keyed different on the PCB, so you can't plug the 1000 cartridges into the 2068 and vice versa, obviously. So there's different keys on the PCB and the connectors, so you prevent you from doing that. But anyway, like I said, I built the one up. You know, I actually have a blank cartridge here, and these I kind of went a little extra money on because they're gold. You know, they're gold tinned. They're not just the you know, the Hazel. But Claudius's interface part, I noticed on the fingers for the expansion, to put something else, later on, there's solder mask that covers a lot of the fingers.
Oh,
so there's a problem with that. And so I was like, well, maybe enough is showing where if you put a RAM pack on, it would make contact, but no, the RAM pack goes further past what is exposed. And so I had to use a Dremel tool and sand off the solder mask. And unfortunately, since it wasn't exposed, it didn't get the gold on it. Right. So what you sand off is just copper. But it did work because I'm using it on my, TS 1500 prototype system, which is really just a TS 1000, right? But it's got a 1500 ROM in it, and it still has a 2K chip. I need to put a 16K internal upgrade in it, but so I have to use the RAM pack on the back of the clone to run these games. And so once I built it up and threw it all together and programmed it, like I said, the 3 words, states and capitals, chess, and super math. I can't forget super math. They all work. You pick change the dip switch. It's really pretty simple stuff, guys. It's not that complicated. Just copying Timex's design. But Superflow left out the secondary chip select, right? That selects the upper 8K for those cartridges that would use it, which would only be, in this case, Flight Simulator, right? Flight Simulator uses both blobs, whereas the other ones they're 8K or less than 8K programs.
And when you say blobs, you mean both AK chips?
Right. Yeah, the epoxy blobs that they put on top of the chips. Yeah. So that's the super math, or no, that's the states and capitals.
Right. Okay. And then here's the 2 blob.
And that's the Flight Simulator. And you can kind of see there's printing, like a stamp that's on the side there, and it has like the part number, copyright or C Timex 1993, made in Singapore.
Yeah.
So they could know what the hell's on there, right? Otherwise, you'd never know without plugging it in.
Which one of these is it? Yeah, because it just says TS 1500 on it.
Yeah, except for that little stamp. I think the one that's on the states and capitals is a little better.
It is a little clearer.
But yeah, I have some close-ups of there. I didn't post those, but you can see the part number, right? 079102-00.
Yep.
But anyway, so actually, if you put that back up, Dave, you can see, go to the flights. Well, either one doesn't matter. The boards are the same. The boards are identical. There's no difference between the two. I looked at that and I'm like, holy Vias, Batman. God damn.
Yeah, there's a lot, and the same on the 2000 has a load of Via.
Okay. And I can see kind of down on the bottom right, see how that bigger hole? It's not for electrical contact, but it's right there. And then there's one further up on the upper side. So I think that's the alignment pins or whatever they used when they were putting the chips, the dies down on this board. Right. So they could align that board.
Those are called.
Yeah.
Right. Fiducials.
But so scroll back up a little bit and you'll see pin 21. Which this is the top side, so this is all the odd pins, right? So pin 21 is kind of right next to the you see there's a finger there with no connection to it
over here on the right.
No, further in,
sort of in the middle.
Yeah, right there. That's 23. That's pin 23. So 21's right to the left of it, and you see there's a connection.
Yep.
Well, there's nothing on the Superflow's design. That pin is no connection.
Oh,
on his design.
Okay.
So I'm like, well, why is it connected here on the Timex one? So it obviously has to do something. So that kind of led me back to taking a 1510 apart, right? The real ones, and tracing where that pin goes in the logic of the interface part, right? And that's where I had to add in my schematic of the logic circuitry. That's where it comes and selects that chip that's missing here. Right, because if you follow 20, well, you can't follow it here because it's got to be as it comes up, but it goes to that chip, and it goes basically to select it.
Interesting.
Right, So you've got pin 19, which is next to 21.
Yeah.
That is actually chip select 1. So
Oh,
that selects the first blob on the left. Pin 21 selects the second blob on the right.
okay.
So so I added that to Claudius's design, but the machine seems to never get out of reset. It just stays in reset. And it's kind of strange. I thought, well, maybe it's drawing the bus down, but all I have to do is disconnect the select pin from the, because I sandwiched 2 chips together, you know, like we used to do back in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
And soldered all the pins together except for the output enable pin, right? Or the chip select pin. And that's what I ran to pin 21, right? So hey, that should work.
Sounds like you have a little
right?
more detective work to.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
I mean, if you disconnect it, so it's just that pin's just floating in free air, right? So you
Yeah.
know, you're not really supposed to do that. So I don't know if it's floating high or low. It must be floating high because the cartridge works then. But it only works on the lower chip, that lower AK chip.
Hey,
Got it.
Carl,
Yeah.
can I make a quick statement here? I'm afraid we might be losing people because we're getting pretty technical, I think, from a lot of
Really
people's
deep,
levels.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
true.
I think and you and I talked about this at an extended length yesterday, and it was really cool. In fact, you taught me some really interesting things that I should have known a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah,
but
and
maybe
I
you can sum up
understand.
kind of what's
Yeah.
what the
Well,
bottom line
basically,
is.
like I said, what it is you've got 2 chips in the cartridge. So we know there's 2 physical chips, right? Because I was talking to Paul Faro about this. It's like, I don't know, you know, is it 1 chip in there and they're just, you know, how are they selecting it? Because when you make a multi-cart, you basically really only really want to have 1 chip.
1 chip, yeah.
You don't want to have, like, I'm sticking 2 chips together here with this. That's not really the most efficient way to do this. But then again, you kind of have to deal with how Timex was selecting these things back in the day.
Yeah.
So we would have to add extra logic, which I've tried. You know, I think Martin was saying, well, just add those 2 together, and then you'll get an output for either one.
Maybe.
And I tried that, and it still doesn't work. So that's what I mean. I spent all Friday doing 3 different circuit designs, and none of them worked.
And so, Carl, the ultimate question is, does the flight simulator cartridge work in the original 1510?
It does.
It does. Okay. All right. So this
So
is
kind of where I'm going now. Right. So kind of where I'm going now is I'm going to build this one up with the stacked chips. This one I haven't cut the edge card connector because on that one I cut the edge card connector for a key.
Got it.
Right. So you couldn't put this in backwards.
Yep.
Well, unfortunately, where I cut it out for the key was pin 21.
Understood.
So now that's physically
Not
gone
work.
from the cartridge. Right. So I'm going to build this one up, and I'm going to actually change the edge card connector because obviously the key's in it. So I pulled out the pins from the edge card connector. So I'll put a new edge card connector in there, and I'm going to just wire it to the edge card connector. That way I should be able to plug this in into the real 1510.
Right.
See, I have to cut a notch here so it'll plug in the key for it. But then if it works in the real 1510, then I know
you're on the right track.
I know something's going on with the clone interface, because I noticed when I was building the first circuit, you know, you see Timex's schematic and you see the pin numbers, right? And they don't match what Superflow's design is. So they do the same gates, but they don't go to the same pins like the Timex design. So just kind of adds more to this thing. The other part of it is, guys, you know, is I really wanted to be able to bring more cartridges or more games to the 1000. Right.
That was so that's kind of when ask you is you talked about you know, a supercart in essence with multiple games in a, you know.
Right. So I did talk to Paul Foro. Like I said, he's the one that kind of turned me on to the fact that there's 2 chips in there and they're in 2 different address locations. Right. The 8K chips are from 2000 to 4000 hex, and the 16K chip is actually from 8000 to A00 hex. So because you have the RAM in between, right, from 4000 to 8000 is the system RAM.
Yep.
So that's why he was like, and I guess apparently they left room for a 24K cartridge.
That's crazy.
Because the selection logic will keep that chip selected. So I guess they could have put a 16K chip in the second blob as well.
Okay.
Anyway, so I talked to Paul and I was like, he broke down the machine code in the cartridges. Each cartridge has a block of 100 hex bytes in the very beginning. I call them like header bytes. That is a separate machine code program.
Oh.
Right. So when the ROM, the 1500 ROM looks for the cartridge, right? It looks at 2000 hex. If it finds an FF there, well, anything other than 01, right? If it finds anything other than 01, it says there's no cartridge there.
Yeah.
I don't, to go back to doing what you were doing. If there's an 01 there, it says, okay, there's a cartridge there, right? So then that kind of starts the auto launching on the 1500s ROM, right? It knows there's a cartridge there, so it goes and runs the cartridge. Right. So at the beginning of the
we
cartridge,
haven't made it clear, Carl. We haven't made it clear that although this works on a 1000, it doesn't auto boot. I don't think we really said
the 1000 you have to actually,
type in
run that machine code, right? Randomize user 8192, right? That's you're kind of starting it by hand, but you can still start it, right? You can still use those cartridges on the 1000.
That's important too, I think, is that like we were talking about all of these other cartridge systems, the Intellivision, the Atari 2600, when they run, they have a little small amount of RAM available to them. When they run a cartridge, they're running it from ROM. Whereas from what I understand, the Timex cartridges don't do that. They copy the cartridge to RAM and run from there.
Well, the 1000 does. The 2068 actually runs from the cartridge.
Okay.
It doesn't copy anything so the 1000 cartridges copies the ROMs into the RAM.
Oh, that's crazy. I assumed it just ran from the cartridge.
No.
Oh.
No.
All right, so that explains that answers my question of how would you take a program like Flight Simulator, which was written to run in, normal RAM space, and convert it into a cartridge. And so you have to take this program and sort of split it up and give it this little header and then put it on the cartridge ROM or EEPROM or whatever, right?
Right. So again, Paul
Faro, gets reassembled when you turn the computer on.
Right. So, and I kind of expected these things to run like a cartridge pretty much instantly, right? Well, when you actually physically are really doing this, it takes time because in this machine code in the cartridge, it clears the RAM. It has a full 16K RAM clear.
I'll be darned.
So, when you put a RAM pack on a 1000, it takes a little longer to get the K cursor.
Yeah, it's got a longer boot up sequence.
So the same thing with the cartridge. It's like you plug it in and you get a white screen and it's kind of sits there and you're like, okay, and then bam.
Oh, that's
crazy. So not only does it clear the RAM, but it has to copy the 8K of program data into the system RAM.
So,
and then it auto executes it.
Wow.
So although the copying seems to be pretty damn quick because it uses an LDIR command, right? So it just tells it, here's the start, here's how much I want you to do, this is where I want you to put it, LDIR, and it just copies the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that that's kind of the part of it that's never been documented, right? How did Timex do this, the 1000 cartridge stuff? So they kind of use that 100 bytes to add a little bit more to the system ROM, if you kind of want to think of it that way, because they couldn't do it physically, realistically, because the ROM was full.
And you're correct, Carl. I have not seen anything that explains this.
Right.
So this is really cool. This is like totally, at least my experience, totally new knowledge. And I'm glad you're writing this up on groups.io. And I know that you and Ryan and Adam have talked a little bit about pulling together all of this stuff that you've been posting to groups.io into some kind of document or post or whatever. I want to put that on the website.
I got to give credit where credit's due, because Paul Faro is the one that actually figured this out. Because he sent me a disassembly, because like I mentioned before, he had a guy that wanted Flight Simulator to work in his emulator.
Yep.
Right. And I guess maybe the states and capitals and those were, but anyway, he figured out the splitting of the ROM code.
Yeah.
And he actually disassembled the the header bytes. So now you can see exactly what it's doing.
Neat.
And then so I've got that. I'm sure I don't think he minds if I share that. There's nothing proprietary about it because it's on the cartridge, right? So anybody could get that. But the other part of it is and I lost my train of thought there, was that he, once I saw that, and I was like, well, for me personally, I would love to have 3D Monster Maze as a cartridge. Okay, if anybody was back in the day before the
There's an Atari
2068 came
Challenger,
out,
3D Monster Maze. Yeah, that would have put Atari Red out of business.
Before the 2068 came out, to me, 3D Monster Maze was like the bee's knees as far as games for that machine.
Yep.
Right. And so Paul was like, well, that's easy. That's easy to do. So he's like, all you got to do is you need to tell it what line number that the auto start needs to start at, and you need to know where in memory that line is.
Huh.
Right. And his emulator, he was telling me, he says, I told him I don't really use emulators much. He's like, well, that's a shame. You should. And he was shown the listing of 3D Monster Maze. Line 1015 is where it auto starts. And and his emulator tells you where in memory that line is in the RAM. Not only the line number, but where, 5, whatever address it is, right? So that's what you need for the ROM code, right? Of this little header bytes. You tell that to it. And of course you have to, tell it how, it is a 10.5K program.
So you would need to.
Yes, you would need 2. It's not an 8K.
Images, right?
Right. So he made a ROM thing up for me and sent it to me. And it does boot, but I can't get the second 16K, just like Flight Simulator, right? Flight Simulator, it'll load the program, but then it comes back with a 0/20. So line 20 is the auto start.
Very cool.
When I do it for 3D Monster Maze, it comes back with a 0/1015. Right.
Hey, Carl,
so,
I'm going to ask you if we can kind of wrap this up, because there's probably some other topics we may be.
Well, I was going to bounce to you, Adam. This is to talk about the the Albuquerque.
Yeah, we'll wrap this up, but the where I'm getting with this is Paul was saying he could probably come up with a utility pretty easily where you could point it to a .p file and it would make a ROM cartridge file for you.
That would be super nifty.
Lickety split. Then all you would need to do is burn it onto a flash chip, and now you've got a cartridge of whatever ZX81 TS1000 program that you want.
So all of us who thoroughly enjoy low resolution, black and white, slow video games can experience them. And the only thing that we're skipping is this tape loading step, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, one other thing really quick is, Ryan brought this up, and David was also pretty enthralled about it, but Timex, in their infinite wisdom, brought the ROM chip select line to the cartridge connector.
Yeah.
So you have to think, why did they do that? So what I'm thinking is they had planned, or maybe we're looking at alternative ROMs for the Timex 1000 and 1500. That way, if you had like the 3/4 ROM, you could put the cartridge in there and it would boot 3/4 instead of booting the Timex OS.
Carl,
right?
I need you to solve this problem right away so that I can have a 3/4 cartridge.
So yeah, that's kind of where I was going next after
David,
I got this
I
working.
actually brought that up to Carl yesterday. I said, because I know that people in the group are going to need to be running forth. I know it.
We are. Yes.
So it's just, the kind of point is Timex was doing LROS, right? Language ROM oriented software for the 2068, which was basically the same thing, replacing whatever was in the 2068 with a whole different operating system. Looks like Timex was also looking at that for the 1000.
Yeah, you could have done Logo, and there's a bunch of, small languages that would have fit in a cartridge. Yeah.
So who knew this little cartridge adapter thing for the 1500 was so complex, kind of, it's simple, but it's complex.
We got to track down the person who designed this thing and find out just what they were thinking.
I'm sure they were just told do this, and they did. That's probably how it happened. Do this. John Doe.
Well, we definitely need to share this because,
Yeah.
and I know the market for something like this is very tiny, but hey, it's new, right?
It's one of those devices where it's just like, it's weird, it's cool, it's like, I'm gonna, I know that I'm gonna, play with it like 5 or 6 times, except when fourth in particular, I'll be using more, probably every day, to tell you the truth. But and actually maybe I'll just spend the rest of my days playing 3D Monster Maze and let everything
Yeah,
else go to rot.
because I know Adam's never made it out.
I never have
He's
actually.
never found the exit. So
All right, see,
yeah.
see, Adam, you and I, we should just get on. We should
Well,
stream
when you
on
come out here for
YouTube.
the Balloon Fiesta, we'll have a four-day person competition for 3D Monster Maze.
There we
Okay.
go. There we go.
Okay.
Yes, we will
We'll do that.
not leave the room until we solve it.
All right.
So hey, yeah, if anybody's got any comments or questions on this thing, there is a thread on the forum or on the groups.io.
Yeah.
Feel free to throw a comment up there or whatever. But yeah, it's been an interesting ride. I mean, I
That is so
really
cool.
didn't think, we've learned now the header
Thank you, Carl.
bytes of the machine code. Yeah. And so, we've kind of opened up a little bit of new Pandora's box 40 years later.
New knowledge. No, that's great. I mean, seriously, this is without you, Carl, without Paul, without this sort of collaboration, and without the internet, we wouldn't have gotten to this point. This is really cool. It's really cool. Adam, you mentioned earlier that you spent 9 hours in a room with Carl and Ryan, and was this voluntary? Did you?
Wasn't. They came
did you
over without my
invite them into your
permission.
house?
My wife let them in, and forget it.
And those vampires, you gotta be careful.
My wife just yelled at me from the other room and said, "Hey!" Well, before I talk about that, I just want to give other people a chance. Because I did write down some other topics. I don't know if we'll have time to talk about them now. But some of the things that have been going up on the 2068 groups.io are, let's see, some of the programs that were archived in Z80 format, talking about the ZX tools, the banner designer, which I was hoping to make a banner using the 2040 printer to print out Happy Birthday, Carl, but that just did not work out. Let's see, there was a really cool article review of the 2068 in InfoWorld. I wanted to cover the 2050 modem, which I probably will cover today if that's okay, and recommendations on tape archiving. But before we even get to that, I'll just cover for a few minutes what David asked me to talk about. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll put out a call. You know what? Actually, we'll put out a call right now.
Okay.
If you have something that you want to chat about, ping, just drop a message in the chat, because I can't quite. I only see a couple people across the top of the screen, and so it's not entirely clear to me. You can raise your hand if you want, but just drop a little message in chat, and we'll queue you up.
Yeah, I only see 15 people in here, and yeah. So.
Yeah, but I only see 6 people across the top of my screen. Yeah. So
right,
jump in, Adam.
Okay. Well, yesterday afternoon around 1 o'clock-ish, Ryan came over, Carl came over. Let me drink some water here. And we hung out. Ryan stayed until around 8. Carl stayed until about 10:30. And we chatted about Timex mostly and did Timex related activities. It's really awesome once again to be able to get together. I guess we've gotten together about twice a month now recently, so
yeah,
it works out pretty cool. And as I've said, for anyone who hasn't heard, Ryan and the street from me found each other by accident through this group. Carl lives nearby, and doesn't take too long to get together. And Carl brings over hardware. He brought over the K-Pro 2 CPM machine, which I won't talk about too much since it's a Timex group, but since the Timex was going to have a CPM module, that was my interest in it, and Carl brought that over, and we messed around with that for a while. We also used the 2050 modem, which is something I want to emphasize a little bit here because I talked about it the last time during the meeting, and I find it interesting because it didn't really come out, but of course it did come out at the same time. Like Timex didn't release it, but is it Westbridge? Do I got that right? Who released it?
Yep. Westridge.
Okay,
Yeah.
Westridge. And so it was very widely available because it was very inexpensive, and you could also buy them for next to nothing if they were broken and fix them and turn them into serial devices. So I was just interested in it, and I got a voice over IP line. And I talked about this last time, so I don't.
Oh, I think Adam just fell completely off. Yep.
Yeah, his video kind of
His
hung
video
there,
cut
and
out
then,
for a second.
yeah,
Hopefully he'll come back
yeah.
to us. Ada, can you talk to me for a second about EGA? Because I don't remember enough about the difference between CGA and EGA. But I remember that, you know, like you said, there was a separate monitor that you had to get.
Yeah, I think CGA, EGA is more or less the same. It's just a little higher resolution. But
Okay.
it's, I think those are digital TTL level video signals, right? They're not analog like VGA
Right, they're
is
TTL.
analog RGB.
Okay.
EGA and CGA are TTL level from what I recall.
Okay. Okay.
Which would have to be, because if it was the 2068 puts out RGB digital.
Digital, yes.
Right.
Okay. And so you got 8 colors, right, Ada? Not the 16. That there's no bright on the output of the edge connector.
It is full color.
Well, it's six. EGA is six.
Sorry, but Ada, were you using the edge connector signals?
No.
The RGB? What did you use?
Well, I don't remember his name. In late or early 80s, a guy who was pretty good in electronics modified inners of my 2068, so he added some circuitry inside the 2068 and added I believe DB9 connector to and with a special cable DB9 to an EGA cable. So I was taking the I guess RGB signals
right
via that adapter, via that cable, and plug it into the EGA monitor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he probably added some sync circuitry. Sorry, Jeff.
No, I was going to say the same thing, Carl, because the EGA uses positive going sync pulses and standard NTSC are negative going, so you need to do that. And then EGA is a 64 color palette, uses 2 bits for R, G, and B. So you could probably just tie them together, but you don't get bright out of the 2068 at that point. So
right. Okay.
Do you still have that machine, Ada, or is that?
I have the machine. It has been in the boxes for, don't laugh, 30 years.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Along with my micro drives, with interface one, with my joysticks, with my unopened 2068. So I have 2 of them. All my Timex Sinclair related devices, along with the chips and everything, is in one box in my garage. One of these days, I'm going to either open up and put it on eBay, or I will knock on Dave Anderson's door. I will say, "Hey, take this out of my hands."
Thanks a lot.
Well, the other thing is that, because I was mentioning that if you had the machine, then we could reverse engineer it, right?
Yeah,
If you,
that's
we could look
that's
at the
exactly what I'm
circuitry.
curious about. Yep.
Right.
I do
Reverse
have
engineer
a
what?
machine in my garage. I do.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's just a matter of, just like all of us, I have a bunch of Timex stuff, but some of it I don't know where exactly it is. I know I have it, but I don't know where I put it.
So, Adam, while you were away, we were chatting with Ada for a second about his machine, and someone had modified it for him a number of years ago so he could hook it up to an EGA monitor. And
the 2068 then, or 1000?
The 2068, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay.
And he believes that it had 16 color output, so there had to have been some additional something to make that happen, because it's not normally available. You'd have to somehow derive that bright signal.
Sure, understood.
So you were telling us about,
Yeah.
You started talking about the 2050, and your video kind of froze. And
Yeah, I don't know. I had to log back out, and
okay,
I got my wife to help me. She's like, it happens with her all the time on her work meetings. I didn't know that. So yeah. So I can't remember exactly where I was, but I think I was just about talking about, I've been wanting to get 64 column mode to work with the terminal program.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is mterm, the software that came with the modem does not support that. But it was brought up in the group. I think Stuart brought it up from Zebra Systems, or maybe David, that there's a program written for OS 64, which is a cartridge that gives you basic with 64 column mode, called, and the terminal software is called zterm. And I downloaded that from David's site yesterday, so thank you for archiving that. And if there's anyone listening here, by the way, who has the documentation for a program called zterm, let me know, because we had to like fiddle around with the keyboard, like pressing all the keys to figure out what was what. And that was mostly Carl who was able to, he just takes his hands and goes plap, plap, plap against the keyboard. And he's like, that's the best way to do it. I'm like, you're my keyboard. Oh, actually, Ada, what do you got going on there? Can we highlight him for a minute?
Yeah, I'm in the spotlight.
I'm trying to show the back of the EGA monitor.
Okay, so, well, that's a.
Can you highlight him? Because I think I'm still highlighted.
Oh,
that almost looks like one of those Commodore monitors.
No, I recognize that. Is that a Magnavox or something? That's an RGB input. Yeah, look at that. Okay. That's one of those. That's before they sort of had standardized on this sort of thing, and you could buy.
Yeah, I remember those connectors. Yeah, they were.
Sears.
They were. Yeah,
a lot of them.
Those were kind of more industrial connectors. They weren't really consumer. Those are kind of what you would find on like industrial monitors.
Yeah, it looks like what they call a cinch connector. The manufacturer. Adam, your video dropped. Are you there?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Can hear you, but your video's blank.
Well, let's see. I don't know.
This is the front. Just bear with me 1 second.
Let's see.
And here's a good old analog TV. Channel buttons.
Wow.
Video system.
Can you get us a shot of the back model number?
Yeah, who's the manufacturer on that?
On the
I tried it.
Sears, Roebuck and Company.
Okay.
Bottom number 21353.
Yeah, because I'm gonna have to go look on eBay for some of those. Oh, sorry.
Just get Adam to send you his.
Yeah.
Shipping this one will cost me a couple of $100,000.
Yeah. These days, and it'll probably end up broken.
It'll probably end up broken.
Sure, the plastic is probably brittle as
heck.
How does one ship a monitor anyway? Really, without how do you do it?
Well,
a lot of bubble wrap.
A lot of bubble wrap. If you have the original packaging with the original styrofoam, that helps. But then, personally, if I had that, I would take it and then wrap it in bubble wrap and throw it in another box. And then, even then, I think UPS would manage to find a way to destroy it.
Yeah, you usually have to put a surrounding box with 2 inches of packing material deep between the two. And like David said, usually UPS airdrops it to you. So
yeah, I think every distribution center they have that those packages go to, they've got like a 2-story stairwell, and then they throw all the packages down the stair. Yeah.
Oh, that's the answer.
Well, Carl, it might just be a conveyor belt, and everything just sort of rolls off the end and falls.
That could be. That could be. Yeah, they get
falls
about
into a catchment, and
20-foot drop.
Exactly. It's a concrete floor.
Right.
I worked there when I was 20. It is a bunch of conveyor belts. And depending on how the package goes on it, it could roll.
I bet.
So I'm gonna. Do you mind if I start talking about this again?
Please.
And,
yes.
I'm gonna turn off my camera. I have no idea if that's causing a problem, but now you can look at my 2600 thing. But let me know if you can't hear me for some reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where I left off was a zterm, which is a 64 column terminal program that works with the Westbridge 2050 modem. And I was a little worried that it wouldn't, but it does. And out of the box, I didn't have to change any settings. What it doesn't do is when you first turn it on, the first thing it does is it asks what disk drive system you have. It asks what parallel port hardware you have, which I don't have.
Adam, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Is TSPico one of the options to choose from?
It is. I went to the future to put that in there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just had Jeff modify the program for me. So, and the other thing it asks for is what printer you have, which are all 80 column printers. So it doesn't seem to support saving to tape, which it actually does support X modem, which the other program, what is it called?
MTerm?
MTerm doesn't support. It only supports saving in hex, which is kind of strange. But so we were able to, like monkeys, work our way around the keyboard and figure out how to use the program. And we dialed an Atari BBS called the Basement, which I talked about last time, so I don't want to repeat myself. Which that is a 40 column like it. So at the end of 40 columns, you get a carriage return. So when you're looking at it with a 32 column 2068, it looks, everything keeps wrapping in strange ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when we were able to use it with, this is what I want to highlight here. I was using the OS64 cartridge with the expansion module that David said, hey, why don't you use this, which is the one that's for the TS Pico and also for the board that Jeff created, which I have kind of a prototype of, the VGA out. That so I was able to use my composite out. Can people still hear me?
Yeah, we're
okay. All right. And along with my VGA monitor called, I think it's called the Yo-Yo. What do you think that's called, David?
eYo-Yo.
eYo-Yo, all right.
Yeah, mine says eYo-Yo.
Well, so does mine, but like, is it a silent E? Who knows? I want to call it the Yo-Yo because we were using it with the CPM machine. Yes. And so we ended up getting onto the board with 64 columns, and it worked great because at the end of 40 columns, we got the real carriage return from the Atari board, and then it looked fine. There were no problems. We logged on in ASCII mode, and yeah, we tested that out. We were on there for a while. I left some feedback for the sysop, and it worked. I mean, there wasn't too much more to try, and it was getting.
Let me interrupt you a little
please.
bit, Adam. Is it's not just 40 columns, right? You could type more, and you would go.
Oh, I could type more, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And you would see even when even on the site when it would send some things. Remember, it actually went further.
That is true. That is true.
Coming from the BBS itself. So. Yep. It does go further than the 40 column. It's not truncated at 40 columns.
Right, it never got
auto wraps.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So you could actually use the full 64 columns.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like when I was leaving feedback to the sysop, I was able to like use the 64 columns and it would auto wrap. And then like if I had like let's say I had a word that would have automatically just gone to the next line. Or not, it would have just like, let's say I was typing my name, Adam, and it got to 64 columns and at AD, it automatically put it to the next line at 64 columns, which I don't know how it knew how many columns I had because I didn't tell it. So that was kind of pretty cool. But I was also, I'm stuck at 300 baud, so it's very slow. So, but it does work. And if anyone else wants to ever try the 2050 modem and call me directly, I have a phone line, let me know. And I will try it with you,
Yeah, we were joking around that, we're probably the only people in the world that were using OS 64 with Xterm with a 2050 modem, dialing to an Atari BBS on a 2068.
Yeah, we were joking, but it was also true. So
yeah.
Wow. Does anyone have any questions about that? I'm going to turn it over to whoever wants to talk next. Anyone have any questions?
So I think the maximum speed on that Timex Sinclair modem is 2400 bps, faster than 300.
No, the chipset that it uses in there is a Motorola chipset, and it's 300 baud. It's designed for 300 baud. So if you wanted faster than that, you'd have to put different modem chips in there that could handle the faster speed. Now when you convert it to an RS-232 port, I think you can probably go up to 19.2K, right? Because now you're using the Intel chip, the INS 8251. You're not even worried about the modem part of it, right? So you could hook it up to a US robotics modem or external, and then you could probably go as fast as 19.2. But
Yeah.
and I know eventually, when I finish that mod for Adam and Ryan, I think Adam wants to hook up I think he's got a Supra 33.6K
Yeah, super
external.
fast.
Yeah, and so it's just what terminal software will understand, the AT commands,
Keep
right,
up with it.
for modems like that, right?
Yeah. So we had a little exchange on the group's list about the 8251, which is the I don't know, is it a serial?
It's an ASART, or I think, or maybe just a USART,
Okay.
Universal Synchronous. Yeah.
Okay. And if you designed a circuit, for instance, that basically replicated that portion of the modem, the connecting the 8251 to the 2068 at ports, I think it's 73 and 77.
Mm-hmm. Wow,
Um,
Dave, good.
You'd be able to take the output of the 8251 and do what you're doing, Carl, which is turn it into an RS-232 port.
Right.
And then you could connect that to one of these serial to Ethernet or serial to Wi-Fi adapters. I haven't used one. Well, I won't say I did use one a very, very long time ago, and I think that it supported that you would essentially connect serially to the thing, and it put up a terminal interface that you could then use to telnet from. And the adapter itself did the telnetting. So that might be a future path. For folks who want to get their 2068s online, which is through an 8251 to a Wi-Fi, and then we wouldn't have to invest in VoIP lines like Adam did.
Yeah, that is a much smarter way to go about it. I'm just doing it because I think it's interesting.
Right. Yeah. It is incredibly cool and crazy. Yeah.
Well, it gave us a chance to test all these 2050 modems to see if they were good or not.
Yeah.
At least there's that.
Joe, you posted a video to the chat. Is it that monitor that Ada was showing us?
Yep.
Oh, cool. Okay. Oh, the other thing I was going to say, Adam, you mentioned X modem and hex garbage and etc.
Yeah.
And getting X modem working on the 2068 terminal programs apparently was kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Go ahead. Why is that?
I'm not entirely sure. Well, X modem was a little intensive. I remember from my K-Pro days, an X modem being a yay, it's got X
standard,
the terminal program, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Y and Z were some other things that were about the same time. I'm not entirely sure why, but there was at least one program, I think it was called Loader 5 or Loader V, that Kurt Casby wrote, that worked with the M-Term software that added X modem transmission, but you had to like drop into basic and do some other stuff, and it had to be the right phase of the moon, and etc., in order to download or upload an X modem program. I'm not entirely sure what the problem.
Well, X modem allows you to have like checksums, right? Whereas hex does not. So you have to just hope that there's no transmission errors.
Well, X modem let you transmit binary programs,
right?
Or programs
so does
in
hex.
binary, excuse me. Whereas if you were, and what it would do is, for some systems, there's a character that is like end of file, and you can have you can have that character legitimately in the middle of a program and not have it mean end of file. And so, how do you transmit that? Well, you have to, encode it, and Xmodem was one of those ways. But yeah, also to your point, checksums so that it could send a packet, and the checksum would be
Right.
sent back, and packet, and so on. So you'd get through the entire thing, and have a proper transmission without data corruption. Whereas other things, were always fraught with challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it just had a lot of overhead.
It did have
So
overhead.
there's a lot of background processing that it had to do, and probably it was challenging for a Z80 system to work everything together.
Well, like I said, the K-Pro did okay.
Okay.
And it's C80 based, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's running CPM versus the 2068, which has its own special challenges in that respect. I think Xmodem for a lot of the little micros, like the TI and the Coco and some other things, were kind of a challenge. Yeah.
So it
'Cause I
must be
remember
written in machine language then, I suppose. Like for the OS 64, it must not be written in BASIC, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, probably not. It's probably written
Yeah.
in some sort of machine language. Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause I remember somebody made. I was looking this up, but it's a serial device that you could hook up to like all these old computers, Atari, Commodore, but it goes to a Wi-Fi thing like you're talking about,
Yep.
David, so that it lets you use these old computers serially to get a Wi-Fi to connect to your Wi-Fi network.
I think it's called a Wi-Fi modem. I know exactly.
Yeah, I can't.
That
These
makes
things
perfect
were.
sense.
Yeah.
I know
Well, this
exactly
guy
what
had
you're
made.
talking about.
Yeah, this guy had made these for himself, but he sells them. He had made a 3D printed case for it and everything, but it was not really for the Timex per se, but obviously because we don't have a serial port. But if you make one on there, then I don't see why it would work. It's just what software would you use? You'd have to have a terminal software again that would understand AT commands, and I'm sure there's several out there.
Z's got it. It's the Y modem by Jim Drew, and I'm going to drop it.
Somebody who's trying to show Xterm 64. Is that the manual for it?
Who's showing that?
It's out of
hang
focus.
on, hang on, Keith. Let me spotlight you. Okay, go ahead. Oh, look
Yeah,
at
there
that!
it
You
is.
got the manual.
Oh, wow.
Hot damn!
Look at that. Now I don't have to be a monkey.
Can you scan that for us, Keith? Okay, cool. That'll be great.
Hello, Carl. This is Gustavo.
Hey, Gustavo.
Oh, hey.
Good, fine. Let me ask, but I don't know who interface are you using. The problem is to connect the modem at any computer is not the case of the 2060A or CPM machine. Remember, you need a full pin serial port. You need all the lines, including the DCD, the data carrier detect, and also the ring indicator, plus DTR, plus DSR, plus CTS and RTS. If you have a full signal serial port, great. If not, you have a problem.
Well, I'm going to speak to the Atari experience. There was a modem for the Atari made by Supra that connected through the joystick port.
Right. Yeah.
And did Adam did it use both joystick ports or just the one? I can't remember.
I
had
think it
one.
did use both, actually.
Use both.
I can't
right.
remember. I never owned one, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
And that was only eight data lines. I can't remember if you could have used the other lines as signals, but obviously that modem worked, and it had far fewer signals than a full RS-232 port.
Well, I know in the 2050 modem, when you convert it to RS-232, you have 3 handshake lines out, 3 out lines, right?
Okay.
And 3 in lines.
Okay.
So you have 6 control lines in addition to the transmit and receive for the 2050 modem.
Yeah.
So the thing I'm making for these 2050 modems for Adam and Ryan will have those. So basically it's going to be a full control RS-232 port.
Okay, good. Interesting. You're following that guidelines that folks developed back in the 80s for basically turning a modem into a RS-232 port.
Basically, right.
Okay.
Right. And I just, I desoldered. I know the one guy was like, "Well, you solder a socket on top of the chip."
Right.
I'm like, "Well, I'm just gonna. You take the chip out and you solder my board in, and you
Yeah.
just plug the chip into my board.
Okay.
That way, I get all the lines and I can route them to my relays."
Okay.
So
Adam, you mentioned a video board, a VGA outboard that you have from Jeff.
Correct.
And I just want to hijack real quick. So Jeff worked on a board that plugs into this expansion bus thing that we're using with the TS Pico, and it's just a board that has a couple slots in it that extends the 2068 bus.
Mine has 4 slots in it, actually.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And John Oliver did a similar thing for his disk system, which used 2 cards. So Jeff, for a fair amount of time, worked on one that used an FPGA, and the FPGAs are not cheap. That's the one that you have, Adam. And Jeff, do you recall when we started talking about using the Pico instead?
Couple months ago.
Couple months ago, yeah. I mean, you really just jumped right in there. So we talked, as a result of working with Ricardo and Gustavo on the Pico, and discovering all of these other things that it can do, one of which is a library that somebody's written that generates a VGA signal, and it runs on one the main core in the chip in the Pico is the Raspberry Pi Pico processor, which is just this little thing. It's about 2 inches long, but it has 2 cores, and this VGA library runs in one core, and you can feed it data from the other core. And so I tortured Jeff by suggesting that he give it a whirl, and Jeff was sufficiently tortured. But he wrestled the problem to the ground. And now we have what we call the Jeff board. And it's amazing. It uses a Pico, it generates VGA, it just sits on the bus and watches the display memory. And it doesn't matter if you have it in the regular 40 column display mode or if you've got it in the high res mode. It watches all the appropriate things and generates the video. And this thing also has an audio output jack, and you can cook. There's little VGA to. I'll get one right here. There's little VGA to HDMI adapters. So this is a VGA cable, and there's an HDMI dojigger here. And these things usually have a 1/8 inch audio jack. So Jeff took the audio from the 2068. You can plug it into your little VGA to HDMI connector, hook it up to your HDMI monitor, HDMI TV, whatever, and get beautiful 2068 sound out of your TV, just like the Atari folks.
And Jeff, you're using or David, you're using the sound pin, right? Which is a mix, the beeper and the AY. Okay. And kind of the other thing, David, is to kind of go back why we did that, or why Jeff was doing that, is because of the bright issue, right? Because the 2068 RGB, we don't have an intensity. We can't tell when it's trying to do a bright color. And so,
that's just like the least of it. Let's go back to the world of composite video, and just how absolutely horrific 2068 composite video is. It is so noisy, and there's just like all this ghosting, and it's terrible. But back in 1983 on the crappy color televisions we had back then, you know, you'd look at it and it's like, oh, is that my crappy TV or is it the computer? And we just sort of accepted it, right? So, you know, this board that Jeff so amazingly, you know, wrestled to the ground, it sort of solves that other half of our 2068 problems, you know, of, you know, now we have a thing where we can load and save to a digital format, and now with, you know, with Jeff's hard work, we have a thing that we can hook up directly to our monitors and have a beautiful crystal clear signal. It's amazing and simple, and there's nothing to it. You just plug it in, it works. There's no configuration, there's no booting, there's no nothing. You just plug it in and it works. And because it uses this Raspberry Pi Pico chip, if, you know, if you want to do upgrades, you want to putz with it yourself, you can do that. You know, you can go write the code, you can download the new thing to the chip and see if it works. Anyway, we should have those available soon. I have spent a fair portion of this weekend doing a lot of soldering. And after all that soldering, I wrote Jeff an email and I said, I'm ready to embrace surface mount parts.
And that's the other thing too, David, is, you know, a lot of these PC houses, they'll build it for you, and
Right.
it doesn't really cost too much. You know, it's not really it's not unreasonable for what you get.
It's not unreasonable. Yeah.
It's funny that you bring that up, that you're ready to embrace surface mount devices, because I was talking to Carl yesterday about that video board, and I was like, I think it was built for me, like, and they get it, just solder it, and I was like, I don't know. It came to me and it was put together already. And I was like, we were talking about like how it might be easier for you guys to do that.
Well, Jeff, you built that by hand, right?
Yeah.
With, you know, a microscope and a very steady hand.
Thank you so much.
He had to have a stencil, right? Use the stencil. They made you use stencil for it. No? Wow.
No,
Okay.
it's all hand soldered.
Wow.
Well,
we got
kudos. Kudos.
I'm not sure that or psychotropic drugs. One of the two.
Well, it looks, you know, as Dave Jones from EV Blog would say, it looks like a built one. You know, like it was, you know, like professionally soldered. Well, I didn't look at it really close, but from what I could see of it, it was like, you know, it didn't look hand soldered to me. I've done a lot of hand soldering SMD jobs. They don't look that good.
Z, I don't know if I can hold my breath an entire weekend. He says,
at least you don't have to smell the fumes.
Right. But yeah, so to your point, Carl, what we're talking, JLC PCB will send you solder masks for like $9 each or something.
But like I said, I've had them assemble them too. As long as you know, yeah, you put the parts in their, you know, their store,
their system,
so they have them available. And once it's in there, like I said, they always have coupons too for those assembly services, because I guess they're trying to, you know, boost that up or whatever. But I mean, yeah, it's like, I don't know, $5 to assemble it, and whatever the cost of the parts are, right? But I mean, $5, hell yeah, you guys do that, and it's professionally assembled, right? And so definitely save you time, and I'm sure, well, time is money, right? So if you're saving time, you're saving money.
I just want to not solder 40,000 pins.
Rookie.
Well, my big thing is soldering the edge connectors onto these things. That's what it just that's tedious to me.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah, let's talk about soldering connectors.
The 2050 modem's edge connector soldering job is so crazy when you look at it.
That is a bizarre piece of work. Yes.
Yeah.
If you've never opened one up, it's got this 20-50 pin wire cable that goes to the, you know, to the modem, and it's broken out into individual wires that are individually soldered into spots.
It's a nightmare to, I mean, It's not for me because I didn't solder it, but it's
Right.
whoever did it.
Yes,
Whoever did
it's
that.
not so bad. It's not so bad on the 2050 board because it just uses a a compression connector there,
Okay.
right? And it just solders down straight to the board. So that's easy. But yeah, in the interface part where it plugs into the computer, I mean, somebody had to split all the wires out because it's like a ribbon cable,
Yeah.
right? So they had to peel the wires separately. There's ferrite beads on each one of those wires.
Oof. You're kidding.
So they had to put the ferrite beads through each wire. And then they had to solder them down. I was like, oh man, I could probably do maybe 1 or 2 of those a day before I would just want to have to go out and beat my head against the wall.
Yeah, that's crazy. So we have just a few minutes left. Joe, when you and I were talking earlier, you said you wanted to put together a little presentation, like a slideshow or something about your archiving process.
Yeah, just some tips I've learned trying to use Audacity to fix up old computer tapes.
Do you want to?
Wait, does that mean we're all going to have to like spend a few minutes every couple days to like figure out the ones and zeros? Is that what you're saying?
Only if you want to.
That's part of the process. Yes. Do you think you would be ready to do that at our next meeting?
I hope to, but I can't guarantee. I'll let you know a little bit later on because I have one kid that's moving and another kid that's buying a house is bugging me constantly with video chats trying to ask me to virtually tour houses in Chicago. So yeah.
So what you're saying is you have a life?
Yeah, I have a life.
You got to get rid of that. You got to just focus solely on Timex stuff. All right. So tentatively, we'll pencil you in, but erase you if necessary. For our next meeting, which is first Monday in March, which is the 4th.
Actually, before you start giving that summary for when the next meeting is there anyone present here who has thought about doing any talks that would want to do a talk?
Present on something?
Yeah. Anybody?
We can call on people.
Every single person.
We know that people are active. We know that people have interesting stories.
Well, all right. I'll take that as a no.
I'll put out a call on the groups list. And if you're not on the groups.io list, definitely get on that because wow, it has exploded with activity. I mean, literally, Adam, you noted just how many messages.
Right. We had like something like 400 messages last month.
My inbox is just polluted with all of the ramblings and rantings, you guys.
And not only Carl then.
Right.
Yeah. I did want to kind of ask Ryan, because like I said, he got his ZX NTSC Spectrum back yesterday. That was another part of the reason why we, met up is so that he could get that Spectrum that I had been fixing since I think I started that thread in December.
Yeah. Have you tested it, Ryan?
Yep.
Can you make let me just pin you first so that you can make can you do the YouTube face?
Oh yeah.
Awesome. So is it everything that Carl said it would be?
He made this little power
switch. Nice.
Power switch on the end of the power supply. And composite mod. And
we tested it with a whole bunch, or Ryan tested it with a whole bunch of software using my div MMC yesterday.
Ooh.
Yeah. Now I meant to ask, I forgot to ask Carl about the composite mod because I did send a message last night because I was getting oddly, I have to turn it around. Sort of this jittery text. That's a little hard to see there, actually.
And with
there
sort of flaring around the letters.
But it always seems to jitter when it's white background and white border. If I change the Watercolor
Getting
and all.
seasick. I'm getting seasick.
Okay. Then that seems to go away.
Huh. Well, that's the standard composite mod that everybody recommends. Apparently the signal that comes out of the Spectrum that goes into the modulator is composite.
Yeah.
You really don't have to do anything to it. You just,
But,
I mean, I threw a cap in there just because they were recommending that, that takes out the 2-volt like offset that's on there, and some TVs don't like that. So put the cap on there, so it's putting out a 0-volt signal. It's taking that offset out of there, but that may be just something specific with that TV, because obviously we hooked it up to it.
That's what I
Go
think
ahead.
I've seen with lots of composite outputs, is that modern TVs that are digitizing that, it's kind of hit or miss sometimes.
So what I would recommend is go to Paul Faro's side and get you a Spectra that has RGB out on it. Of course, it adds some other stuff to the Spectrum, but just trying to plug them.
So,
But
David, were you
unfortunately, it has a
suggesting,
SCAR connector. Anyway, go ahead.
David, were you suggesting that Ryan actually talk about it in the next meeting? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, Ryan, you want to do a little show and tell at our next meeting when you've had more time to experience it?
Well, I mean, there's not much to tell. I mean, other than that, it's a Spectrum with NTSC video out.
Yeah.
Well, I disagree, because as we were using it yesterday, we came across a whole bunch of interesting little tidbits that I think we could talk about, like especially the color flancing. I don't know if that's the right word. Like when you'd have those strange colors that would be shadowed.
Oh, the fringing.
Some software.
Yeah, I don't know that I was seeing that on this. That's the thing, is that it was. I think it was affecting your screen. There is something there, and that was affecting your screen in one way and mine in another way, apparently.
I think that's worth talking about all by itself.
Well,
because
didn't
on
you
different monitors would have. Go ahead.
Didn't you hook it up to the yo-yo monitor and it looked good there?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
so it's really a TV thing, because on the one hand you're hooking it up to a CRT,
right?
Your
Which where it should
Toshiba.
look best, because it is.
Well, it depends on the processor that the TV does.
Yeah.
Right. It's not really just okay. It's a CRT. That means it's going to look better. It really depends on what kind of composite process, circuitry that they have in that TV. The yo-yo TV, well, the yo-yo, whatever you want to call that thing. Other than what I noticed is the contrast is really high on that, so you can see the backlight on it, which is really kind of annoying to me. But anyway, it looked pretty good on that, right?
It did.
And then now he's hooking up to his Vizio, and he's. I mean, I don't know how it looks other than the jittering. Does it look? I mean, when you're using it for something, does it look good? Does it have the
colors
shadow?
The colors look good. I don't think I saw any shadow. But the character, the pixels have a little fuzz around them. They're not real crisp, but then again, it is a composite signal. So
yeah. So and there's processing in there, right? It's converting that to a digital thing to put on your LCD panel. So, it's going to really be TV specific.
Hey,
well, let's talk about that next time. That'd be cool. And when is the next meeting?
The next meeting is Monday, March 4th.
4th, he said. Yeah.
9 p.m. Eastern. Real quick, Joe, have you hooked up those Harlequin boards and taken a look at the video output from them? Because if I recall, the one that I got to work properly, the signal's kind of hot and weird.
I replaced the video chip on that one,
the 80,
and it worked fine.
The 724. Okay.
Yep.
Does the blue is what I remember is the blue, the cyan, as it were, is on an LCD screen, at least it was really almost overdriven.
Yeah, I believe it was a failed video chip.
Okay.
Video output chip, or the little mixer chip. Yeah.
Okay.
Because composite was really weird, and the signals on the scope looked really weird, and I said, that's just a bad chip, and I swapped it out. It's a surface mount, but
yeah,
it wasn't pretty good pitch to it.
Okay.
But yeah, I swapped that out and it worked fine.
Okay. You don't get the fringing around the characters or anything, or a
not on my monitors, no.
Okay.
But picked LCD monitors for my vintage stuff that's deals with that
better
and it very well. You know, it handles it very well. I have other monitors that it would probably look horrible on, but I don't use those for the vintage stuff.
Oh, maybe that's us, Adam. Maybe we have, you know, the yo-yo monitors.
Yeah, that was your recommendation. I, in fact,
It was my
we found out.
recommendation. Yeah.
Yeah, it worked out great with the CPM monitor yesterday, but yeah, that's another story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, as per usual, we ran out of time. We didn't get to cover everything we wanted to. Adam, let's build a agenda for the next meeting.
Okay,
Because
we can do
you
that.
had a list of items, and I think I have 1 or 2 things that we could put on the list, and
all right,
we'll put Joe in.
And anyone here
in
is welcome
pencil.
to, you know,
Yes.
come and make a item they want to talk about, and or even just hear about. If you don't want to talk and you're like, I'm interested in hearing, you know, something, you know, let us know.
And we'll put the call out on the groups.io list, and you know, like Adam said, if you want to know about something, you know, ping in that list. If you want to you know, talk about something, ping in that list, and then we'll put together a little agenda for meetings going forward. Cool.
Good idea.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a good afternoon.
Happy birthday, Carl.
Yes,
Yeah,
happy
thanks,
birthday,
guys.
Carl. Carl, go ahead and just email us your social security number so we can, you know, get the rest of your personal data.
Well, I hit the big 56. So there we go.
Thank you. Also helpful to know. Good. now we have the year.
That's about, you're not going to get social security number. You're going to just get the age.
Young pup.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, gentlemen.
Bye.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.